Earlier last year, we finished a trip that we'd talked about for 10 years, booking a one-way ticket to somewhere far, far away, and then seeing how long we could travel until we either ran out of money or we no longer liked each other. But what that wish would turn into was this. 1 week in Singapore, a perfectly designed city to set the tone. 4 weeks across Western Malaysia with tea plantations, blue mansions, and the diversity of Kuala Lumpur. 3 weeks relaxing on the islands of Lombok, Indonesia, with waterfalls and beachy sunsets. Then on to Bali for bougie cafes, rice terraces, and mountain sunrises. Next, it was 2 weeks in Thailand for a brief stopover in Bangkok, but mostly for the excellent city of Chiang Mai, with its fantastic food markets and nearby elephant sanctuaries, all before finishing with 5 weeks in Japan. Starting in the south, Okinawa sees the country at its most tropical, then on to Fukuoka, most famous for its street food ramen, the Edo period escape to Karashiki, Hiroshima for its unforgettable history and stunningly beautiful Miyajima, Osaka to experience its Dotonbori nightlife and what to do in an earthquake, and then finally Tokyo, where by this point, well, we mostly just rested on our laurels. Whilst we've featured most of these places in previous vlogs, this video will take you through the entire journey in one stretch, along with 2 weeks worth of stories that have never been seen before, so if you will, please sit back and join us. This is Suitcase Monkey, taking you through exactly 100 days of travel from Singapore to Tokyo. We begin our trip in Bugis, a great location that was very accessible to everywhere we'd later be visiting. Singapore was without question the most expensive location we visited in this entire 3-month trip, so our first hotel was central, but at the sacrifice of space. My first reaction to Singapore was just loving how its impressive architecture intermingled so well with nature. And yet, even with so many skyscrapers, there was still plenty of heart to be found, such as the nearby Kampong Glam. But as good as this introduction was to the city, there was still one place I frankly couldn't wait to see with my own eyes. 15 years ago, the addition of Marina Bay Sands and Gardens by the Bay put Singapore on my map, and even with anticipation, I can say with confidence, walking around them in person did not disappoint. There really is something so futuristic yet majestic that immediately pulls you in. Although you can still get much of the experience by walking underneath for free, we paid extra for the Skyway, which for us was worth it, but not essential if you're short on time. Gardens by the Bay is more than just its super trees though. Enter the Flower Dome and Cloud Forest. The Flower Dome is the largest glass greenhouse in the world, and spread over 3 whole acres, showcases flowers and plants from across the world. Fighting every urge I had to cover the plants with some gravel, we next moved on to the arguably more impressive Cloud Forest. Featuring the world's tallest indoor waterfall, its climate and unique plants replicate a real-life tropical mountain 2,000 meters above sea level, but all still playfully presented as fantasy. Despite this bold presentation and connection with Avatar, it never strays too far from its essence of simply being an exotic botanical garden. But for every collection of tropical plants, there'll also be a fun interactive element like this one, where you can explore the cloudy skies and look a bit of a tit whilst doing it. The first shock we experienced from Singapore though was undoubtedly its incredibly thick humidity. Leaving the cool comfort of air conditioning is like being hit over the face with a hot, wet salmon. And I say salmon because it felt like I could eat the air. Luckily, the respite of a massive downpour wasn't too far behind, but was often so intense that finding shelter was almost mandatory. Though we did find enough examples where the public walkways obviously took this into account, which was great. Not so great though was the new price ranges that we were now getting used to. A coffee, for example, could cost double what it would in London, and when you have 3 months of travel expenses ahead, this was a shock to the system. But screw it, we started with the most expensive country for a reason, so we mostly tried to just ignore it. Speaking of cost though, I was still super impressed with the magnificently grand Marina Bay Sands Hotel. Some say its unique design represents a boat gliding on the water, and it certainly does. But it also looks like your dad's right slipper balancing precariously on top of 3 slightly squeezed cereal boxes. Its observation deck sits 57 floors on top. It's the world's largest public cantilevered platform, overhanging the North Tower by 200 feet with unobscured views of the city below. Inside Marina Bay Sands, or more accurately underneath and along its connected mall, you'll find a casino, luxury shopping, fancy dining, canals, theatres, and it's worth a wander out of curiosity alone. We found the mall food court here to be a solid option. It is pretty busy, but there is a heap of variety, and for Singapore, at a pretty reasonable price for our evening meal. If you only have one evening in Singapore, it should be along the various shores of Marina Bay, as you're literally spoilt for choice and it's all free. The Garden Rhapsody is held twice nightly, lasting 15 minutes and is definitely recommended. After a pleasant 20-minute walk, we arrived at Spectra, a light water show held right in the middle of the bay. Looking back, these first 2 days were still very much us in holiday mode, going at full speed, compared to the slower long-term approach we'd adjust to soon enough. And that's why our next 3 days were spent at a much more relaxed pace, starting with some of Singapore's finest food stalls. Morning, we'd booked ourselves onto a local hawker food tour around the must-visit area of Chinatown. Singaporean food is largely a combination of Chinese, Malay and Indian cuisines, and across the country there are 120 hawker food centres holding 13,000 stalls in all. The most surprising number of all though is that 40 of these stalls have been recommended by the Michelin Guide, serving dishes such as this curry chicken noodle. Other foods to highlight here was this chicken rice, which although Chinese in origin has become somewhat of a Singaporean national dish. This pandan cake was also great too, a light fluffy sponge that felt sweet but was so airy never became overbearing. For drinks, always be on the lookout for sugarcane. Its juice is extracted from squeezing the cane through a machine and is incredibly refreshing on a hot, humid day. Speaking of thirst, we next made our way to Raffles. Named after Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles, considered the founder of modern-day Singapore, this colonial-style hotel was established in the late 1800s as the place to be seen. Back in those days though, when men were men and things were more uneven, etiquette dictated that ladies couldn't consume alcohol in public. Because when you think about it, why should they? So in 1915, to entice the females, a savvy bartender at this very location created the original Singapore Sling cocktail. A drink that looked suitable for a delicate lady, but was actually gin, liqueur, pineapple and lime juice. It also had the added bonus of making the men seem interesting. There's also one other tradition here that still remains welcome, and that is this. Throwing your nuts on the floor is pretty liberating. In a country known for its strict rules, this is the only place in Singapore where littering is accepted, and that's why I was taking every opportunity to enjoy myself. I did see this one guy though who was either really trying to get his money's worth or was a squirrel in a past life. I entered the long bar with zero expectations and then actually really enjoyed our time here. Visually, the decor puts you back in time really well, a soft jazzy piano ballad sets the mood, and the Singapore sling itself was enjoyable, especially for this. Just 3 stops up the north-south line and we arrived at Orchard Road, Singapore's shopping paradise. I'm not usually a mall guy, but they're so integrated into life here, you're missing out on a small local aspect if you don't get lost at least once. Orchard Road is probably the most straightforward concentration of shops, but we also personally enjoyed Raffles City and Suntec City malls, but that was likely since they were just close to our hotel. Food courts are usually found on the lower floors and never disappointed us for a relatively low-cost lunch and even a few cheeky evening meals. And so, with our first week in Singapore coming to a close, for our last 2 days here, we decided to go all out with some of the country's largest attractions. This is Sentosa Island. As a former British military base and Japanese prisoner of war camp, it clearly has all the markings for fun times. Almost 5 square kilometres in size, it's a quick monorail ride from the main island and immediately transports you to another world. There's a couple of beaches, a casino, tons of individual adrenaline rides, 2 golf courses, a Madame Tussauds, a cable car, and most surprisingly of all, a Universal Studios. There is one thing I wanted to note here though. This is not Universal Studios Florida. Although it still has many aspects that are fitting for that level of theme park, comparatively it is pretty small and with some pre-planning, very possible to experience all the major thrill rides in a few hours. Unless of course you have children slowing you down, cramping your style. Since Universal only opens at 10 AM, beforehand it is possible to sneak in an hour-long trip to the Sea Aquarium next door. Now the second largest in the world, this aquarium holds 12 million gallons of water, 100,000 animals and 800 species to keep you busy. Soaking in everything we could from Sentosa Island, we took our longest train journey yet to one of Singapore's most popular attractions. The Night Safari is a first of its kind. Unlike a traditional zoo which struggles with showcasing nocturnal animals during their daytime opening hours, this is an open-air tropical forest, open from 7 PM to midnight. Now do bear in mind that your eyes are much better than my camera, so these pictures do a slight injustice to the actual experience. But you can explore all of this safari through a 40-minute tram ride, along with 4 walking trails to take things at a slower pace. Of the 100 plus species found here, around 40% are on the threatened or endangered list. Although I'm not usually a fan of zoos, this is done in a way that, although it is definitely a zoo in disguise, the illusion created does make you feel you're at a safari. Gone are the bars and cages, instead using cattle grids, plants and water moats. Adding the artificial moonlight to Singapore's humid skies and vocal purring insects, you almost forget where you are. Obviously by this point, after just 7 days, the long-term travel aspect hadn't yet kicked in. But with our upcoming entire month solely based in Malaysia alone, this was where things really started to feel more like home. In total, we spent 3 whole weeks in Kuala Lumpur, split over 2 different apartments. Some days were set aside for sightseeing, and others just full-time editing of the Singapore footage you've just seen. I've never edited away from London before, so it was great learning that I really could do all of this remotely. Only now I was spending my downtime with swimming pools instead of people who don't know how to use headphones on public transport. But our first big sea change was how much further our money stretched here compared to the very pricey Singapore. For $48 per night, we got this 780 square foot apartment, boasting this lovely city view each morning. Quite the change from $110 for just this. Plus here we did have the added bonus of super fast Wi-Fi, which wasn't surprising given the size of our internet router. As much as we enjoyed our room though, it was undoubtedly its rooftop that really took the cake and a lot of our time. And so after channeling my content creator mode and a full day's worth of editing, we made our first proper trip to KL's most iconic landmark. The Petronas Towers are the tallest twin buildings in the world, rising 88 stories high, dominating KL's skyline from almost every direction. Its unique exterior, modelled around the Islamic 8-pointed star, beams brightly in all weathers, but especially in the evening. The surrounding area itself, mainly the KLCC Park, is worth some of your time also, as is the shopping mall directly below the towers and the Symphony Lake water show right out front. Overall, our time in KL was massively improved from meeting up with our friend Tat, who's lived here most his life. So, helped with his local input, he took us to Marini's on 57, a cocktail and restaurant bar that gives some of the best city views. Despite initially the weather not entirely being on our side, the panoramas were still impressive nonetheless. That is, until the night wore on and the skies really opened up. This is the highest two-story bridge in the world. 170 meters above street level, it offers the unique perspective of being able to see the building that you're in, but from the outside. So after a dose of KL's modern city life, tomorrow we delve further into its past, to a must-visit attraction dating back over 100 years. Just 1 hour north of the city centre, the Batu Caves are a series of limestone chambers formed 400 million years ago. For the last century though, they've housed one of the most popular Hindu temples outside of India. The grand scale of your surroundings, coupled with the routines and rituals of worship, all make for a must-see location. Speaking of which, we love a good Chinatown, and KL's version eventually became one of our favourite areas to hang out. There is a harmonious blend of old and new here. Whilst you can still easily find an authentic stall or restaurant, there's also an uptick of bougie cafes and restaurants. We frequently wandered around brunch hunting and always ended up finding somewhere new to spend our mornings. For shopping, we stumbled upon this really cool bookshop that we ended up spending a good half an hour just walking around and reading. Central Market hosts an indoor collection of independent traders and is worth a visit if you're tired of the shopping malls, whilst Petaling Street is a more traditional market, selling Prada bags that are absolutely genuine. Being near the equator, Malaysia sits within a tropical climate, typically around 30 degrees, which is 86 degrees Fahrenheit for people in these countries. This ultimately means that you can expect short, sharp showers, but this didn't affect us too much since it balanced out the heat. One unique evening was an hour's drive just outside the city. Starting from a small jetty that hints at the possibility of being kidnapped, you're soon taken out along a narrow, winding river until eventually you reach an almost pitch-black surrounding. Here, the engine is switched off, you're left in total silence, and then hundreds of fireflies slowly fill the sky. And whilst the overall impact of this moment could never be fully shown through a lens, it's a moment that stays with me. Getting around KL in itself was admittedly sometimes a challenge. Although there is a perfectly fine transport system, quite often we found it didn't quite connect very well together. Take this for example, it's either 7 minutes by taxi or an hour in transit, and then even longer to walk, despite its close proximity. So before you even land into KL, and this goes for most of Southeast Asia, I'd heavily suggest you download and set up a Grab account first, which is equivalent to an Uber. A 10 to 20 minute Grab ride here can cost a couple of US and was often the best way to get around, not only in KL but especially around Penang and Langkawi Island also. So that was how we made our way to the National Museum of Malaysia. And for one single $1, you get the entire history of the country. And I mean beginning with Pangaea, so they really start at the beginning. Trade routes, occupation from the Portuguese, Dutch, Japanese, British, then independence, the birth of modern-day Malaysia, and apparently an off-chance meeting of Lennon and McCartney with Neil Patrick Harris. But if you really want to stretch your legs, the Forest Eco Park is the only remaining rainforest in central KL. Its canopy walk and short hiking trails are good for an hour's change of scenery. It's also, rather conveniently, right next door to the Menara Tower, otherwise known as the KL Tower. This 300-metre observation deck arguably offers better views than the taller Petronas Towers, and it's easier for getting a walk-up ticket. I also enjoyed comparing rooftop swimming pools, but that might just be me. For our final afternoon and evening in KL, I wanted to highlight the second area we found ourselves gravitating towards most, and that is Bukit Bintang. Definitely the most pedestrian-friendly area. Here you'll find easy access to night markets, shopping malls, restaurants, bars, and trendy rooftop cafes. But food in general was one of our Malaysian highlights, and covering our whole time here, there were a number of dishes that really stood out. First, there's nasi lemak, the Malaysian dish. Presented in a variety of ways, but typically with coconut rice, fried anchovies, and a spicy relish. It's most popular as a breakfast, but can be eaten any time of day. For a supporting cast, there's satay chicken, always a personal favourite of mine. Great Chinese food is obviously everywhere. There's tons of mee goreng, essentially stir-fried noodles of any kind. We also loved this roti canai, a soft, flaky flatbread, perfect with a curry dipping sauce, and even this roti tisu, which, if you can't tell, is on the right. And with Malaysia being such a melting pot in general, it's super easy to come across well-made Vietnamese and Thai food, and it almost always was excellent. But then, of course, there's this, the durian. The durian is very much a love it or hate it fruit, and I should say that I did not love it.
Absolutely not.
You do have to question any fruit where they give you gloves, but it's the smell that first hits you. Although this is no surprise given that it's literally banned on public transport and hotels due to its odour. As for what it tastes like, well, if you can imagine a bunch of male sailors jumping into the ocean and becoming a sour mush, these seamen would not be to my palate. Durians aside though, the easiest way to sample everything in one single place is Jalan Alor, KL's most famous food street. Home to a mixture of hawker vendors and sit-down restaurants, it's an easy recommendation, even if it's just to take in the Dolby Atmos. Despite our time in KL drawing to a close, this Malaysian trip was only just getting started. Tomorrow we'd be driving 3 hours north for a beautiful change of pace and scenery. Cameron Highlands is known for its rolling hills, hiking trails, and dense forests. At its highest point, the elevation reaches 5,000 feet, making for a much more pleasant temperature. And this was one of the main reasons the English colonised the area in the late 1800s. 140 years later, this English narrator still appreciates a cup of tea, some scones with a cooler climate, and a view like this, so I guess some things never change. Along with strawberry farms, tea plantations are the biggest attraction here, and with this being our first of 2 that we'd visit, it did not disappoint. We'd be staying for just one night in this moderate but super central hotel in Tanah Rata, the largest town in the area, and a nice change of pace. For tomorrow, we'd booked a morning tour, which I'd really recommend if you're short on time, despite the early wake-up. Mossy Forest is the oldest forest in Malaysia and sits 2,000 meters above sea level. This atmospheric labyrinth of branches and thick layers of moss are a sight on their own, even on a damp December morning. The Bow Tea Centre is one of the most popular attractions in all of Cameron Highlands. A producer of tea since the late 1920s, this visitor centre opened in 2007 and features factory tours, tea gift shops, and a cafe with quite the view. And with that, our brief time in Cameron Highlands had been a welcome change of scenery. But with our flight to Langkawi Island leaving tomorrow, we were now dreaming of boats, eagles, and beaches. Langkawi is Malaysia's northernmost island. Geographically closer to Thailand than it is its own mainland, the vibe can echo the not too far away Phuket, but still keep its own identity. Its most popular hotspot is easily Pantai Chenang, a 2-kilometre strip of sand, along with its main high street running in parallel. Whilst this area might have become a little too touristy for some, for us it was pretty refreshing, especially since the vibes of island life nicely underpinned everything. One aspect we really loved here is how Langkawi delivers its night markets. They hold a different one each night of the week, all spread out across the island in multiple locations. This means that no matter where you're staying, you'll likely be close to one of them. The nearby Kua also doubles as the main entry point for those arriving by boat from Thailand or Penang, and it's here where the island has its own Statue of Liberty moment. This impressive eagle is the symbol of Langkawi, and one we'd learn more about tomorrow during our favourite day trip throughout this entire trip. Pilim Geoforest is a UNESCO geopark, the first of its kind across Southeast Asia and home to a diverse collection of wildlife, beaches and caves. Its mangroves often take centre stage though, and our excellent tour guide took us through the area's history, biology and a crash course in how not to anger the local mafia. Its most important residents though are its Brahminy kite eagles. It's believed that the word Helang, the Malay word for eagle, forms the basis of the name Langkawi, hence its welcoming mascot. Seeing this many eagles within such a biodiverse ecosystem and a stop at the nicest beach on this trip all made for a truly memorable day. On the flip side, our hotel here was a little hit and miss. We booked it since it was relatively affordable and literally walking distance from the airport. Almost in the centre of the island, it put us about a 30-minute drive away from anything, with grab taxis always nearby. But although the staff were very nice, the room adequate, the pool large enough, there was an air of The Shining about it, especially with this bizarre space theme that didn't quite match up to everything else. I mean, what is this all about? It really does walk that fine line between cute and psychopathic. Something that will probably work for everyone though is Langkawi's tallest attraction. To get here, you'll first pass through the aptly named Oriental Village. Now, nothing screams the Orient more than elegant bridges, colourful houses, and a Union Jack double-decker bus, but it is nice for a photo stop. We'd bought a combo ticket which comes with a bunch of other attractions thrown in. Having the lowest of expectations, we actually had a whale of a time at this 3D interactive museum. Yes, this was completely ridiculous, but you can't tell me you won't be having fun doing this. But the main reason we were here was the Sky Bridge. To get there, you'll first have a choice of cable cars to reach it. There's the glass-enclosed gondola, the open bars gondola, and the God Help Me gondola, all climbing 700 meters along a 2-kilometer cable. Across the multiple viewing platforms, you're not only rewarded with the Sky Bridge on arrival, but uninterrupted views of Langkawi to the south and Thailand to the north. With our month in Malaysia coming to a close, Penang Island would be our last stop, somewhere that had been on my personal bucket list since I heard about it 3 weeks ago. Penang was the first British settlement in all of Southeast Asia. Its capital of Georgetown would be our new temporary home, and one that we took at a much slower pace. Shaped by centuries of intermingling between various cultures, it's now a seamless mixture of street art, unique colonial architecture, and has become known as the foodie capital of Malaysia. There is undoubtedly a massive mixture of vibes here, and you never quite know what to expect around every corner you turn. After our previous space-themed experience in Langkawi, Georgetown was also where we totally redeemed ourselves, this being our favourite stay in all of Malaysia. This 1920s shop house has been turned into a cute boutique hotel, but still manages an air of homestay about it, especially during its courtyard breakfast servings. 10 minutes down the road, Georgetown is easily best discovered on foot, especially for its 100+ murals of street art. Since 2012, artists near and far have been commissioned to add their own work to the alleyways of Penang, and it makes for a great few hours hunting them all down. Our favourite Georgetown attraction was probably this visit to the most photographed building in Penang, the Blue Mansion. Originally built in the 1880s but rescued and restored 30 years ago, it's now a magnificent blend of Chinese and European architecture. Working as a hotel, restaurant and time capsule, it's best brought to life by its guided tours. What made this tour extra special for us though was that our tour guide was one of the actual owners, which I'm not sure if this is a regular occurrence, but the insights and stories she told so passionately and obviously from the heart were fascinating as a result. By now we were somewhat getting used to living out of just one carry-on suitcase each and washing the same set of clothes every 6 days or so. And things were feeling less like a holiday, where you're always against the clock, and more just a different way of life, where delays or time constraints didn't matter so much since you always had more time. But as great as Malaysia had been to us, all good things must come to an end, and it was time for somewhere new. Christmas Day, believe it or not, was just 5 days away, so we wanted to treat ourselves to a nice hotel in an even more relaxed setting. And after some searching, we stumbled upon a potential gem just 6 hours away by plane in Lombok, Indonesia. Our first full day in Lombok was just getting acquainted with our new local town. Kuta largely centres itself along one road where you'll find a mix of cafes, restaurants and surf shops. The community here felt small enough that we'd often recognise the same people over time, which overall was part of Kuta's laid-back charm. Ultimately, over our 5 days here, downtown Kuta is where we'd always gravitate back to, sampling whatever caught our eye from the previous visit. Over the whole duration of the 3 months, we were usually searching for hotels around £40 per room per night, which largely worked out. But as mentioned, since we'd be staying here over Christmas, this £70 room was the perfect gift and became my absolute favourite stay over the entire Asian trip. This adults-only resort caters to 17 rooms altogether, so always felt intimate and friendly. We booked a superior villa with private pool, giving us access to 1,200 square feet of space to relax and unwind. Breakfast here was always my favourite time of day. We'd simply WhatsApp our order straight from bed, only for it to be delivered to our room shortly after. I enjoyed this so much that since coming back home I have tried to get this into our own personal routine, but Chiaki is having none of it. And then, of course, there's the open-air bathroom, always a novel experience for anyone who hasn't tried this before. As liberating as it is to shower with nothing but sky above, the naked anxiety of having insects constantly eyeball you whilst doing so isn't recognised as the huge downside that it is. The worst example of this though was there was one night where Chiaki woke me up at about 3 AM. "Paul, can you hear that?" Chiaki then mimicked the offending sound. "Chicka chicka chicka." Still half asleep, I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "Chicka chicka chicka." Still none the wiser, I turn on the bedside lamp to be met face to face with a millipede, slowly making his way across my pillow. And they definitely don't put that in the brochure. Partly due to it being Christmas, much of our time in Lombok was either relaxing in our villa, chilling with the millipedes, or out in Kuta. I was still editing, of course, every other day, so now the biggest problem was the delicate work-life balance between script writing and having a massage. But you can only do so little until the urge to explore strikes again, so that meant venturing further north in search of Lombok's most famous waterfalls. The impressive double hitter of Benang Stokul and Benang Kalambu waterfalls is one of Lombok's most popular natural landmarks. But whilst most people choose to only visit the two most popular sites here, there are actually two more waterfalls buried further along a makeshift jungle path. Although these hidden waterfalls, as they're called, aren't essential or as impressive in size, there is more of a chance you'll get them both all to yourselves as we did. And in this 30+ degree heat, wading in the cold fresh water did make the extra hour's diversion worth it in the end. So for now, we ventured on one last time towards our fourth and final waterfall. For our last full day in Lombok, we took life into our own hands, and by that I mean quite literally. I'm about as skilled at riding a bike as I am a Segway through a hurricane, and fun fact, we did actually fall off into a ditch at one point, but no harm, no foul, and since Kuta's beaches leave a little to be desired, it was still fun driving west for a couple of alternatives. Only about half an hour's drive away, Selong Balanak is one of the most visited beaches in Lombok, mostly popular for beginners learning to surf. There's a bunch of bars and restaurants dotted around, but since we were hounded a little bit to book surfing lessons for ourselves, this turned into more of a pit stop than we assumed. Much more peaceful though was Muan Beach, possibly the nicest sand that we found, and this time we had it all to ourselves. Only 15 minutes from the first beach, this is all very minimal, with only a handful of restaurants and lounges to rent out, but its peaceful nature was more what we were looking for, meaning a lack of the human race. Our best discovery though was actually on the way back to Kuta and only about 5 minutes out of town. Sharing its space with a full-on yoga retreat, this hillside restaurant not only channeled some nearby Zen vibes, but gave us our best lookout yet of Kuta from high above. The food here was also unique and flavourful, all locally sourced and with a constantly changing menu to keep everything fresh and in season. As our lunch settled, we drove back to our villa for one final rest up, before taking a taxi to what would soon become my all-time favourite sunset experience. What I enjoyed most about this lookout was the abundance of everyday activity happening in every direction, all on top of ever-changing shadows as you move from one location to the next. We were slowly moving away from the main hotspot area, but there is also a bit of a festival vibe here, so there's also a good energy in the air. Whilst wondering where to venture next, our original plan definitely did not include visiting Bali. We'd heard too many tourists, too much traffic, full of drunk partygoers, and as one couple potentially approaching a midlife crisis, seeing younger, more attractive people having fun is no longer our idea of having fun. But since we were so close and the connecting flights out of Indonesia were much better than here in Lombok, we next booked the 40-minute flight across the water to see it for ourselves. We almost didn't visit Bali, but I'm so glad that we did. Once we decided on Bali, we tried our best to pick locations that would be more suited to couples over partygoers. But we still wanted to dip our toe in just a little with our starting destination of Canggu. Out of all of the places we were about to visit, Canggu was the biggest nightlife area, with neighbouring Seminyak and Kuta even more. So we chose Canggu mostly out of curiosity and booked a stay in this pleasant, affordable hotel right on the edge. This put us away from all the noise, but still a short walk from the indulgence of trendy shops, restaurants and cafes. And boy, is this where Canggu excels. Yes, it's easy to write all this off as surface-level tourist stuff, but we never found it insincere. The hospitality was amongst the best we received in all of Southeast Asia, with locals frequently starting friendly chit-chat. Bali might have gone all in on tourism, but they were showing their experience because of it. Turned out our preconceptions were slightly overblown then. I mean, even the partygoers seemed respectful enough, and yes, we were largely in bed by 9 PM, but I'm sure they behaved after. So the only real negative so far? Getting from A to B. You're either stuck in a car not moving for minutes, or you're hanging off the back of a taxi bike for dear life. So we just kept things local on foot. But crossing a road is an accomplishment in itself, and once you have, just make sure the pavement doesn't then kill you. Despite this minor risk of potential amputation, maybe it was just the incredibly low expectations, but we quickly went from Canggu boo-hoo to Canggu, who knew? Ultimately, our guards were considerably lowered, and we were now eager what other surprises lay ahead. Tomorrow we'll be escaping the heaviest traffic with some island exploration, visiting some of Bali's most popular sites. The Ulan Danu Buritan Temple dates back almost 400 years. One of Bali's most iconic and scenic sites, it's dedicated to the water goddess Dewi Danu. Although this is undoubtedly the postcard shot, the surrounding compound will probably take up more of your time. Its high elevation not only lowers the temperature to a pleasant level, but its grounds are enjoyable enough to walk around, with Balinese dance and music echoing throughout. Since this is one of the most popular tourist attractions on the whole island, you can also expect other quintessential Balinese traditions. There's the swan boat ride, a bunny rabbit petting zoo, and everyone's favourite Balinese icon, Father Christmas. Despite the obvious clash of culture versus popular, I'd say this is a must-visit stop, especially if it isn't too far from your chosen path. Rather than taking a taxi from Canggu to our next hotel in Ubud, we instead booked a private driver for the day. This allowed us to visit these wide range of attractions with one easy solution, while still carrying our luggage to its final destination, and wow, did we ever fall for Ubud, our home for the next 4 nights. Of all the places we visited over our entire 100 days, Ubud sits in our top 3 memories that we keep coming back to. We immediately felt a difference in the air, and unfortunately for me, it's a difference that's hard to show on film, so I'll try my best with words. Compared to Canggu, it seemed more mature, more balanced, and felt made for solo female travellers and couples. It still had all the trendy hangouts, but was just more at peace with itself. The holes in the road were harder to fall down, and there was even a pedestrian crossing. But by this time, I'd already perfected the "I'm absolutely crossing this road and you're just going to have to deal with it" mentality that you need. So we'd gone from Canggu, who knew, to Ubud, you absolutely should. I'm sorry. Don't get me wrong though, Ubud is still catering to tourists, but it just felt a little more lived in. Balinese homes are often laid out in walk-through family compounds, and our accommodation formed part of one, so it always felt like a homely return. Coupled with a nice pool for cooling off and this peaceful balcony setting where breakfast was served, it was a good price for what it was. It was also nestled on this quiet street, just a few minutes from Ubud's most popular roads, and was a great base for some of the town's biggest sights. One ritual we were becoming very used to seeing were these offerings, placed outside of homes, shops and temples. Known as Cenang Sari, they're a symbol of gratitude and respect to the gods. It is worth noting that throughout all of Indonesia, Hinduism is practiced by only 2% of people, but it makes up almost 90% of the population in Bali, which in turn is a healthy difference maker to the island's unique vibe, especially in Ubud. Similarly, Ubud has long been connected to yoga, and before arrival I assumed my mornings would be looking like this. Unfortunately, they were still looking like this. But we were inspired enough to take this sunset yoga class, something that isn't a regular thing for us. As the session wore on, the open-ended room allowed for a natural soundtrack of cicadas and rustling leaves, and as night fell, it was the ideal time to take a moment. For anyone keeping count, tonight was New Year's Eve, and I can't think of a more suitable venue to welcome in the second worst month of the year than a water palace masquerading as a special paid event clubhouse. The night started off as usual, with a brave group of sober men busting their best moves with some effect. And things were pretty under the radar until the inevitable countdown begun. What this massive crowd of people hadn't realised, ourselves included, is that the venue had strategically placed fireworks around the dance floor. You know, the dance floor that was now filled with people, which the fireworks fell onto. Yet somehow the shock of embers raining down upon us is what we needed to push this party to the next level, and the DJ finally kicked things into full gear. Ironically, we almost didn't visit Bali to avoid scenes exactly like this, but it was scenes like this that ultimately made it one of our best New Years together. This ultimately turned into our latest night out, but with only 2 days left in Ubud, it was strangely followed up by one of our earliest morning wake-ups. The reason for the early rise was simple. We fancied this popular hiking route, but also wanted to avoid the overbearing midday sun. Although the trail begins more rural, it eventually scatters a few much-needed rest stops. It was at this point that we almost turned back, but I'm so glad that we pushed on, as the path eventually opened up to what was the perfect first breakfast of the year. After our favourite breakfast, we struck lucky again for the evening. This popular family-run restaurant settles nicely within the open-air family compound setting. Their signature dish is an Indonesian favourite, nasi campur, essentially translating to rice being mixed with an assortment of small dishes. Tofu, egg, deep-fried corn, satay chicken, vegetables and sambal mata. A tasty slaw that brought everything together really well, and it ended up being our favourite Balinese restaurant. This 3-hour electric bike tour was also one of our top Bali highlights. Our excellent guide Kadek showed off various stopping points in and around Ubud's most popular local rice field, Tegal Alang. It's also here where you can recreate that infamous shot, the giant Bali swing photo. Being just about the worst advocate for social media reach, I instead opted for this tiny, no-fuss baby swing. And despite looking ridiculous in practice, you can almost end up not looking like a massive bell end. The strangest part though was this coffee tasting. Introduced by the Dutch in the late 17th century, Indonesia has become the 4th largest producer of coffee in the world. And because of this, you'll find coffee plantations all over Bali, but what makes them unique is Kopi Luwak. This is where the coffee beans are digested and then pooped out by these guys, locally known as luwaks. The beans are then cleaned, roasted and ground as usual, with the idea that it provides a richer, heavier flavour. Putting aside the small question of how anyone discovered this difference in the first place, reactions range from calling it the holy grail of coffee to questions around animal welfare. This location did have an animal welfare checkmark on TripAdvisor, with the Kopi Luwak being served as optional at a cost, still leaving a large selection of coffees to taste. As we finished the day trip with another excellent nasi campur, we were now closer to the end of our time in Bali than the start. Tomorrow we'll be taking a car to Kintamani, and whilst it definitely has its positives, there was one unfortunate downside that might be too much for some of you to ignore. Only 1 hour north of Ubud, but with an altitude 4,000 feet higher, Kintamani started well. Upon arrival, we stopped at a row of restaurants and were immediately welcomed with a refreshing temperature drop and this stunning mountain range. Fortunately, this view never gets old and was even more peaceful from our accommodation. With an incredibly kind family looking after us, again the room itself was basic, but the wake-ups were like a dream. There was one unfortunate flip side to our time in Kintamani, and that was just how many houseflies there were buzzing around. So as a slight warning, either skip ahead 20 seconds if you don't like looking at lots of insects, or just close your eyes and listen to my thoughts. Ready? Now, I'm perfectly fine with real life breaking into the tourist holiday illusion, but when I'm drinking it, I'm less so. I don't know if we were just unlucky, sometimes the flies weren't so bad, sometimes they were, but I have to mention it so that I'm not presenting a false illusion. The good news is that the main reason we were here, the Mount Batur hike, was fly-free. The bad news was that of the 3 sunrises we stayed in Kintamani for, 2 were idyllic and 1 was not. And you can guess which morning we chose. So that's why the night before, as the rain, thunder and lightning grew in volume, we crossed our fingers for our 3 AM pickup. After 100 minutes of walking, 2,000 feet of sometimes steep elevation gain, and all done in a pair of socks and sandals, the summit did feel like a worthy achievement. The hike is difficult enough that the average person will feel tested, but still manageable enough for the vast majority, which is why it's Bali's most popular hike, and although it was busy, it never felt too crowded that it became an issue. Overall, even though I'd still recommend this hike, I'm hesitant to recommend Kintamani as a place to stay for more than one night. If you were still interested in the hike, the tour we use do also pick up from both Ubud and Canggu, so that might be a better solution. But with our legs now sorely aching and socks basically ruined, our final days in Bali would now be centered around total relaxation. Located in southern Bali and less than half an hour from the airport is Nusa Dua, a loosely gated community but still open to the public. It's purpose-built for luxury resorts and less crowded beaches. They say variety is the spice of life, and this spotless, nicely cut grass non-authentic Bali was a brief welcome change. Instead of haggling at the market, the prices were now just displayed. There was no more getting stuck in traffic, and instead of animal shit in my coffee, I now had sugar. You can, of course, stay in Nusa Dua for as long as you want to pamper yourself, and your accommodation will play a large part in this. Just because our dates didn't quite work out, we actually split our time over 2 separate locations. The first was in a more intimate, cozy villa setting. The grounds here were small but really well laid out, along with the usual top-notch Bali service that we come to expect, and it was just so nice to finally take a breather. Our second stay was a much larger hotel resort, and again in terms of the facilities and staff, ticked all of our boxes without the price getting too crazy for what it was. But it was our room here that we particularly loved, easily our favourite of the entire stay. It had this wide open living space with all the mod cons and a breezy outdoor balcony. With both properties, we kept the cost down by staying just outside of the prime location, which is mainly along these 2 beaches. The hotels found here are usually 5-star quality, and if you can justify the price, are definitely worth checking out as an option. These hotels though are still open to a wander, even if you aren't staying here, since you can enjoy them as a visitor for a breakfast, lunch or cocktail stop. And it was after leaving one of these hotels we actually had this brief encounter with a whale and 2 dolphins, which turned out to be the perfect Bali send-off. Although we didn't know it at the time, by this point we were just beyond the halfway stage to our travels. We also felt good with the idea that Japan would be our final country to round things out, but we still wanted somewhere different in between, and we settled on Thailand for reasons I'll explain later. So it was here in Bali where our complete country list was finally set. We'd visit Thailand, spend a week or 2 there, before making our last stretch across Japan, the country that put this YouTube channel on the map and made this trip possible in the first place. Our time in Bangkok was admittedly limited, partly because we'd both visited before, but it was largely just meant as a way to meet up with an old friend and be a long layover to reach northern Thailand. But now at day 55, I was totally exhausted with the daily filming aspect of our travels, which explain why the 2 clips you've just seen amount to the total footage I have from all of Bangkok. And yes, what impressive clips they are. My memories of Bangkok, though, are that it's certainly cleaned itself up a lot since 2009 when I was first here, and that the food is spicier than I remember. So our main highlight was easily the £5 massages we took massive advantage of, with this spot near our hotel receiving 2 visits from us in one single day. Fantastic. 1 hour away by plane though was Chiang Mai, somewhere we had no plans on visiting but heard it mentioned so often by other travellers we'd speak to that we just had to have a look. So this is how we ended up in what became one of our other top 3 locations from this whole trip, which in hindsight was partially helped by my continued reduced filming output, trying to still live in the moment. Located in the northern Thailand mountains, Chiang Mai's higher elevation makes for a beautifully pleasant mid-20-degree temperature. Its main centre is known as the Old City, which is where we spent most of our 9 days, and we absolutely loved it. Founded in the late 1200s, the city itself is walled in by this 1.5 kilometre square enclosure, inside of which there's this amazing eclectic mix of Buddhist temples, busy street markets, trendy shopping, and bougie dining, including this brunch restaurant that awarded Chiaki a 5% discount. To get around the city, everyone uses these Song Taos, which are a great mix of bus and taxi. First, you hail them down and specify your bespoke drop-off point, just like you would with a taxi, but then you share it with everyone else doing the same thing. This means that although there is no set route and your journey won't always be direct, its £1 average cost makes it really affordable. But better yet, since you're facing each other in such a small space, it often sparks friendly chit-chat amongst its passengers. There was even this one conversation featuring 5 different nationalities bonding so quickly over our journey together, we almost didn't want to leave. Overall, for a city, there was a really friendly atmosphere, and I could have quite happily stayed here for a few months, especially after discovering this local cafe which I used for editing for most of the week. Chiang Mai also had our favourite food market for our entire trip. There was just so much great grub here, the energy was really positive, and the addition of temples by night made it feel really unique. But by far, our most memorable day here was this. As I've come to learn, it's always important to research elephant sanctuaries as best you can, how the animals are treated, what's being asked of them, and going beyond their website. So this time, as much as we could, we felt really comfortable with this sanctuary after reading a bunch of reviews and doing some extra research. This does mean though that the direct interaction with the animals is purposefully limited, but due to this we felt much more confident with what we'd signed up for, and the whole day was very special. And with that, our time in Southeast Asia had come to an end. After 66 days of everything feeling so new and different every single day, I can't tell you how much we were looking forward to something more familiar once again, with our final flight back to Japan. For the best introduction to Naha and Okinawa in general, look no further than Koksai-dori. Stretching 2 kilometers, this high street is unlike any other in Japan, and that's not just because you can be served coffee by this no-faced monster, which is either the most endearing business idea ever or the most concerning. Instead, this road is unique because of the surprising number of Okinawan influences that sit proudly on its sleeve. From signs of the locally produced Orion beer to Okinawan mythology to the insane amount of spam merchandise everywhere, and we will explain why later, to the wide selection of glassware and pottery, yet another regional skill. In fact, just a short walk from Koksai-dori is the Tsuboya district, a quaint cobbled neighbourhood that dedicates itself to these locally produced ceramics and is well worth the short walk for a potential souvenir. Looking back though, over all our lunches and dinners we had during our entire month in Japan, some of our best dishes were around Koksai-dori, with the restaurants all falling under 3 distinct categories. First, you'll find numerous diners featuring live Okinawan music. Most easily described as Japanese folk, it has a very distinct sound. And it was here where I not only enjoyed my first champaru, a local stir-fry favourite, but also a single glass of this, habushu, or under its other name, snake wine. Adding further to the unique nature of walking around Koksai-dori, you'll frequently see these coiled up snakes, and it all comes back to this drink. Dating back to 14th century Okinawa, these vipers are placed in jars of herbs and honey, with the added alcohol dissolving their venom over time. This reptile association gave it the marketing position as a sort of libido-boosting energy drink, much like a better version of Prime today, only without the poison. The second category of diner here was usually 1 or 2 streets removed from Koksai-dori. These would feel a lot less touristy, typically sharing a collection of plates, some with no spoken English at all, but some with an English menu. And if you are wondering, I too have heard really good things about the ass chicken. It is very eggy though. But out of all of these, our favourite was probably Tsukumo. I'll link our other preferred restaurants and hotel that we stayed in the description down below, with all attractions featured in this video on one free downloadable PDF guide. The last category of diner we enjoyed in Naha were all found inside this one building, a massive food court where you could spend half an hour just trying to pick your favourite. The 2 times we ate here, both restaurants had a QR code to order through your phone, which auto-translated to English when trying to choose, something we experienced a bunch of times over our final few weeks in Japan. We ended our first night with a couple of drinks at this cozy jazz bar, then headed back to our hotel sitting on the far end of Koksai-dori. The room was pretty standard, but came with a mini kitchenette and much needed clothes washer dryer. Doing the laundry was basically the only weekly routine we still had, and being self-sufficient for once was a blessing. These first few days being back in Japan turned out to be a useful homesick remedy. Yes, it wasn't London, but at least one of us could read the language, and there was an element of comfort going back to some classic Japan staples. Like dining out with our robot waiter friend, who seemed to have a bit of a nervous twitch about him, but I did see him snorting a Duracell in the back, so... Anyway, it was during this time in Okinawa that I finally finished editing the last video that I wanted to work on whilst travelling. So although I'd started filming once again, this gave me so much more free time to relax and enjoy our surroundings. So after a few days cooped up working, we were finally able to properly explore our new island home. Over the course of 9 hours, our island tour would take in 5 different stops, ranging from 20 minutes to 2 hours each. It's the easiest way to get a taste beyond the capital, but you could also consider renting a car over a couple of days for those wanting to take things at a slower pace. We were travelling in late January, so all of this is their winter time, with temperatures ranging from 17 to 25 degrees. Situated on the west coast and 90 minutes from Naha is the most visited attraction in all of Okinawa, the Chiraumi Aquarium. Once the largest in the world, it's still considered Japan's best and is well worth a couple of hours to explore. Presenting all of Okinawa's sea life, it begins with all the usual exhibits you'd expect from any aquarium. That is, until you reach its most iconic room. The part of today I was certainly most curious about was its finale. On first glance, the American Village feels like a bizarre Japanese attempt to recreate the United States. And if military clothing, the Cheers bar, the hometown of Aladdin possibly, whoever this guy is, and pink skyscrapers doesn't scream America to you, then I don't know what will. I do have to admit though, once The Power of Love belted out across speakers around the village, even I got into it and started walking like an American. This is how they walk, isn't it? The background to the American Village though is once again another Okinawan surprise. After World War II, Okinawa was under administrative US control for almost 30 years, and it was during this time the region was heavily influenced by American culture, and this is where Okinawa's love for Spam originates. Since the canned meat was a popular food ration for US soldiers, it was then passed on via the military as an affordable meal for a rebuilding nation, and even still today, Okinawans consume 7 million tins of Spam every single year, and it all dates back to this post-war era. And so, after Okinawa was handed back to Japan in '72, the local authorities built an American-themed village, partly to kickstart their economy with tourism, but also to provide a familiar spot for the local military bases. Although this all initially seemed like a bizarre idea, by the time we needed to leave, I kinda wanted to stay just a little longer. Tomorrow would be another early wake-up, and for the first time we'd be stepping foot off Okinawa Island and visiting somewhere a little more peaceful. Samami Island is a short 50-minute high-speed ferry from Naha's Tomari port. During the summer months, it's most visited for its beaches, snorkeling and scuba dives, with January to March best for whale watching or simply those wanting a peaceful island escape. With a population of less than 1,000, it has a very relaxed small town feel. The nice man who cooked our lunch, for example, was also the same nice man who helped us board the ferry. This calming, underdeveloped nature quickly rubs off on you, and it's enjoyable just breathing in the fresh air. After talking with staff at the visitors centre, they suggested a bike rental service a short walk away, which was essentially just someone's back gate with an attached honesty box. What we hadn't realised is that by visiting at the end of January, even though it was a pleasant 23 degrees, we pretty much had the entire island to ourselves. Taking the first and last high-speed ferry means you only get about 6 hours for a day trip here, but that probably is enough. These winter months may not offer much for some people, but this day still sits as one of my favourite Okinawa memories, especially after getting this surprise sighting. Our last day would be exploring 3 different areas, just a short monorail or bus ride away from downtown Naha. Shuri Castle is a former royal palace dating back 700 years, making it the most visited historic site on the island. This neighbouring district was previously the political capital of Okinawa, or as it was known then, the Ryukyu Kingdom, ruling for 450 years. Unfortunately, due to a devastating fire in 2019, the castle is currently undergoing heavy reconstruction, estimated for a 2026 completion. You do have to admire their effort for turning the rebuilding process into part of its story, making the regeneration a display in itself, but it does obviously impact the overall experience in the meantime. I still think it's worth a visit if you have the time though, especially when its neighbourhood is still enjoyable for an aimless wander. Travelling to the south side of the island, we next made a trip to Umikaji Terrace, probably the most unique food court I've ever witnessed. A trendy complex split over 4 stories, it boasts more than 40 restaurants, cafes and boutiques, all of which give you a stunning front row seat to the Naha International Airport. Now, I've never been much of a flying nerd, but it turns out there is something surprisingly enjoyable about hunting for an appropriate food snack around this terrace and then watching aeroplanes land over the seas in front. This Okinawan taco rice serving was an unexpected tasty fusion of Japanese cuisine and Tex-Mex, yet another American influence, mixing rice and omelette with beef tacos. Chiaki also really loved this super fresh seafood restaurant, especially this tuna, served here with a side serving of umi budo. Yet another local speciality, it's otherwise known as sea grapes, and they're actually a type of seaweed with a subtly sweet but crispy taste. The last ace that Umikaji Terrace has up its sleeves though are its hot springs. If you really want to spoil yourselves, then the Ryujin Hot Springs bathhouse is definitely worth a visit. But due to time, we instead opted for this free, faster foot bath. If you are daunted by showing another Japanese man your meat and 2 veg, this is probably your next best bet. That is, if you can ignore the waiting taxi drivers in front and the sound of booming jets. Our final stop for the day then was back nearer Kokusai-dori. The Okinawa Museum is the best place for those wanting to learn more about the fascinating, lesser-known history for these islands, although it was admittedly a little, shall we say, Japanese in its execution. Firstly, it's important to note that along with photography, pencils are allowed here, which was certainly a weight off my mind. After buying our tickets, we walked around the first room and then quickly realised there must be an audio guide that we missed on entry. So we went back to the museum entrance to inquire and were told to collect the audio guides from the library, which I don't know why we didn't think of that. The collection process then involved filling out a form for some reason, and then you're handed this. A large clipboard with an attached digital pencil, which now made sense of this. Anywho, this pen attaches to a set of wired headphones, and to select English, you touch an American flag, because they invented English. After we got through all of this, the system then worked as you'd expect, with some interesting little known history around the Ryukyu Kingdom, the Battle of Okinawa, and the island as of today. In summary, carrying a weighty clipboard around for an hour will give you arm ache, and unfortunately the cable for the headphones isn't quite long enough, so it kind of pulls at your head the whole time. So yeah, it's a good idea with some interesting history and questionable execution. But for £2.70, it was fine. For those unaware, Okinawa is Japan's most southwestern set of islands, and our plan was to gradually make our way eastward towards Tokyo. Starting with our only domestic flight to reach Japan's mainland, the rest of the journey would be taken by Shinkansen, moving city to city. Finally leaving tropical island life behind us then, we landed in Fukuoka, the most populated area in Kyushu. After Kuala Lumpur, this was our first major city in ages, and as much as we love touching grass, we are city people at heart, and having a hotel room with a bunch of rectangular lumps outside was an unexpected highlight. And with on-site washing machines twice in a row now, the extra convenience in Japan was already a winner. But let's address our first immediate issue in Fukuoka. In order to keep our luggage light, we'd only packed for temperatures around 30 degrees. I didn't even have any shoes. This whole trip so far had been achieved with one set of sandals. Now being in a more typical climate for Japan in late January, I was frankly, and pardon my French, freezing my nuts off. But one quick visit to Uniqlo and then the post office to return items that we no longer needed set us up for the night. Fukuoka is best known for its yatai open food stalls, typically serving ramen or grilled skewers. Dotted everywhere around the city, they usually only seat around 10 people, with the southern end of Nakasu Island being its most popular collection. Battling the cold temperatures that we were absolutely not used to, this steamy ramen was delicious and perfectly set the mood for the next 2 days. At this stage in our trip, we had well and truly finished with holiday mode and were acting more like locals having a busy weekend. Long-term travel really takes it out of you. You can never truly settle, you're frequently needing to research the next hotel and then readjust to how everything works. But before you reach for the violin, I mention this only to say that it was in Fukuoka that we finally made the decision to book our return flights back to London. Burning through too much money, a need to rest up properly and get back to some sort of routine, and just to be back home, they all factored into the decision. But that meant we only had 15 days to go, and we wanted to squeeze in as much as our energy tanks could muster. So we found ourselves bento box food shopping in a train station quicker than we thought. Grabbing one of these well-packaged delights to prepare for an upcoming trip on the bullet train never gets old, and is a great example of the journey itself being almost as enjoyable as the destination. That new destination was Hiroshima, located 1 hour east, and we immediately felt a change of pace. Following the rise of subways across the country, these streetcars now only serve a handful of Japanese cities and make for a distinct first impression. As we'd arrived so early, we dropped off our bags at reception and walked straight to our first destination. The Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum is, without question, the most powerful and impactful museum we've ever visited. Whilst hearing and witnessing the stories that are shared here isn't what you might normally seek out whilst on holiday, they are nonetheless essential to be heard. And over the 90 minutes we were here, despite the large number of visitors inside, the faint hum of air conditioning was often the only sound breaking the gentle silence of reflection. Whilst I can't show what's fully on display for obvious reason, the museum focuses on first-hand accounts of what the following hours and years felt like, which is obviously terrifying. But stepping back into daylight, we both felt an unexpected feeling of hope that despite what we'd just seen, this area was now a place for living, albeit with an iconic reminder for history never to forget. Whilst we'd be returning to central Hiroshima tomorrow morning, there's another location that would steal us away for the rest of the afternoon, and that was a visit to the centuries-old Itsukushima Shrine. And so, with time ticking, the most direct route for us was this fast boat, departing right next to the atomic bomb dome. This 45-minute cruise was the perfect transport to somewhere that's been on my personal bucket list for well over a decade. Whilst the island's official name is that of its most famous resident, Itsukushima, it's most commonly known as Miyajima, literally translating to Shrine Island. With a population of 2,000 living across 12 square miles, it's incredibly peaceful and perfect to explore on foot. The Itsukushima Shrine is considered one of the top 3 scenic sites in all of Japan, and the main reason people flock to this island. Known as Otori, or Grand Torii Gate, it stands almost 17 meters in height and can be seen floating on the waves at high tide. Whilst this island itself is considered holy, the shrine-specific position makes it a protector over sacred lands, a job it's kept over 1400 years. There is even more to Miyajima though, with this Buddhist temple being the island's most important. It's worth noting that whenever you see these prayer wheels, spinning them means you can still receive the benefit of their blessings even without being able to read them, which is useful since I don't have the time nor the understanding of Japanese. From here, you can next hike up to the summit of Mount Misen, the island's peak at 500 meters, taking around 90 minutes. Or alternatively, for those without time or lung capacity, there is a ropeway which can be ridden instead, taking you up to an observation deck. Our final hour was spent wandering around the nearby streets, but before we took the ferry back, we returned to the Otori one last time, waiting for the sun to finally fall and the waves to slowly catch up. There is something mesmerizing about this view, and this is easily one of my top Japan memories of all time. If I could do Miyajima again, my only advice would be to consider spending an evening here in one of the island's ryokans. Once the final ferry departs, only a fraction of Miyajima's visitors remain, which I think would be a very special circumstance. After the short 10-minute ferry crossing, we still had two quick destinations in mind. The first was sampling Hiroshima's version of the dish okonomiyaki, typically a fried mixture of eggs, shredded cabbage, a combination of vegetables, meat or seafood, then all topped off with a sweet sauce and bonito flakes. But Hiroshima is specifically known for its own version, where instead of mixing everything together like normal, the batter is first cooked into a thin omelette, then layered with its ingredients on top, along with yakisoba noodles. It's a meal that has to be tried, and this restaurant right next to the slow ferry exit was both convenient and well worth the stop. To finish the evening, we took the train back to central Hiroshima and wandered around its central shopping district, before finally returning to our hotel. Our Shinkansen would be leaving tomorrow at 11:30, which would leave enough time for the final two attractions on our wish list, or so we hoped. We arrived at the Hiroshima Castle literally as it was opening, trying to make the most of our time before checkout. Originally constructed in the late 16th century, it was largely destroyed by the atomic bomb, with this replica being built a decade later. For context, it is smaller than, say, the Osaka Castle, and its inside paid exhibitions didn't feel as thorough or as well produced in comparison. That being said, it is still an easy recommendation, at least either to walk around its beautiful grounds or for its panorama views of the city below. Despite its smaller size though, I must admit we were definitely moving faster through things than we normally might, aware that we'd soon be meeting our friends 90 kilometers away. We were very much quick pacing it to our final stop in Hiroshima, one that I'd have loved to have soaked up way more than time allowed. 24 hours after pulling into Hiroshima Station, we were now choosing our second bento box for departure. Located 90 minutes by train, our next stop for 2 nights was Kurashiki. Dating back to the Edo period 400 years ago, the city was once an important rice distribution centre, but is now most famous for its peaceful canals and historic flair. Since many of the town's previous rice storehouses are now converted into modern cafes and independent boutiques, it really does make the town stand out. Surprisingly, Kurashiki is also the birthplace for domestically produced jeans within Japan, and the appropriately titled Denim Street is great for both modern cowboys and Sydney Sweeney. Following an early checkout the next morning, we took our third bullet train with another bento box beauty and arrived into the busy streets of Osaka. The overstimulation of Dotonbori cannot be underestimated. So much so I almost jumped into the river, but fortunately this well-placed sign persuaded me otherwise. Over the coming hours we happened upon 3 different covered shopping streets, all with their own flavour. The first was filled with specialty cooking stores, perfect for window shopping, as well as this guy handing out leaflets. Then, not too far away, is Kuromon Market, a fish market dating back to the Edo period, but is also popular for affordable clothing, homeware and street food. Next, heading north across the river, we ended up in the city's more modern, branded shopping districts, but still with some character. Finally, we took one last evening stroll through Dotonbori, which is when the area really comes alive. After heading back to the station, we returned to our lockers, collected our luggage and headed to our hotel. Whilst on the train, I always enjoy how refreshingly quiet Japanese public transport is. Just have a listen. Rarely a screaming baby. No knobheads watching TikTok. No sense of shh. Sorry. Our accommodation was half an hour outside the city centre and was perfect for our needs. For $45 a night, it was pretty large by Japanese standards, but ultimately it meant we could walk to Universal Studios Japan in just 25 minutes, which is exactly what we did the following day. I've done a whole other video on this park, also on how to visit Super Nintendo World specifically, because it is new and popular and such an unnecessarily confusing process to visit. But all you need to know for this video is that it really is the best theme land I've ever seen, and is well worth a look for any Nintendo players out there. And as a lifelong Disney Parks fan, I definitely preferred my time at USJ compared to my time at Tokyo Disney, which again I've made a video on and I'll link it at the end. With a history dating back 450 years, with numerous attacks and rebuilds, the 5-story castle that stands today is essentially an impressive modern-day museum. Inside, it probably won't be for everyone, but I really enjoyed its history, and it's told through a combination of text, maps, paintings, models, videos, and projections. But no matter how much that side resonates with you, its outside architecture, large surrounding gardens, and mostly the views from up top should be worth the trip alone. Something slightly off the beaten path, since it's only presented in Japanese, is this Disaster Prevention Center. Starting small with why you should fasten your fridge to the wall, what to do during a stove fire, escaping a smoky room, to finally a full-scale disaster, it's ultimately about the everyday threat of the next earthquake being just around the corner. It's a sobering lesson, and as someone who's never experienced such a thing, getting the chance to stand on this simulator was frankly terrifying. Mapped precisely to mimic an actual historic earthquake, it's one thing to be ready for it, it must be a whole other thing when you're just sat on your sofa. We finished our last day with probably the best meal during our entire month in the country. Kobe beef is the famous Japanese delicacy. To earn the official trademark label of Kobe beef, the cattle needs to be raised in the Hyogo prefecture and pass a number of incredibly high requirements. All of this means that its flavour is guaranteed to be tender and delicious, with that marbled texture it's known for. Osaka sits just across the bay from Kobe, so it seemed like a good enough place to splash $200 for the privilege. Now, if that cost sounds high, this is actually on the lower end for a good Kobe teppanyaki experience. A typical serving of 120 grams can be around $100 just on its own, but this restaurant kept its prices in check by serving a 60-gram serving of Kobe beef, as well as another 60 grams of standard Wagyu beef. It also packaged everything into a 4-course set serving, complete with wine, all of which made the price slightly less eye-watering than the other options we were looking into. The short version, though, is that this was a meal to remember. Even though the Wagyu was best in class by any other dining standard, the Kobe beef was on another level, with its tenderness and general juiciness just being outstanding. It probably isn't something I'd do again for a long while, given what else I could do with $100, but it definitely is worth it as a special treat. Stepping back out, with 92 days gone by, 12 plane rides and 20 different hotels, we now only had one more stop to go, and that was the world's most populated city. For those who got bored of this video 1 hour ago but are only watching because you have nothing else to do, the good news is it's almost over. Not just because we're near the end of our story, but this last week was less travel vlogging and more life living. To be fair, one day we may eventually move here, so this was our chance to see what that everyday life might actually look like. Which is how I ended up at the Tokyo Nintendo store, which is so busy its customers can't figure out how to leave. I next got to fill a 25-year wish to see a Japanese pro wrestling show, and a New Japan show at that. I also had my craziest experience ever at a Disney theme park, but given the length of this video, whether you're a completionist or a masochist, I'll link that video as a separate story at the end. It was also my first personal time sampling a Japanese karaoke bar. But I should say, Chiaki does do an excellent rendition of Barbie Girl, and if Olivia Rodrigo is watching, I am available for your next world tour. But above all, what we mostly filled our last days with was food. So much great food, we didn't want it to stop. It was almost as if we were fearing going back to London prices. As our return flights left us with a teasing view of Mount Fuji, the strange part was how much we were actually looking forward to coming back home. Being away for so long does put your own country into perspective, and one of the key reasons we initially booked this trip was we'd very much started to take London for granted and really needed to see it again with fresh eyes. So despite all these memories across these 100 days, more continued to be made with a renewed excitement of being back home. I became a tourist in my own city, and everything felt fresh and exciting, which lasted about all of 3 weeks. Shall we do it again?